Direct from our newsroom in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Eric Severide in Washington, Roger Mudd in Washington, Hal Walker at the White House, David Shoemaker in Boston, Bill Plant in Chicago, John Lawrence in New York, and John Ennis in Hampton, Virginia.
Good evening. Vice President Humphrey today took his Democratic campaign to Boston to receive the endorsement of a Kennedy. Some of Humphrey's detractors also were on hand. The CBS News correspondent David Shoemaker reports.
It was not a particularly good crowd for lunch hour downtown. Ted Kennedy has drawn more people in Boston when he was alone and not running for anything. But Kennedy was there, and that made it a successful crowd from Humphrey's point of view. Almost 1,000 demonstrators were there, too, not as many as expected, but angry enough and loud enough to make it difficult. Only those standing near the loudspeakers were able to hear over the racket. Kennedy was visibly disturbed by shouts he was selling out the young and a traitor to the anti-war cause, but he was determined to prove his party loyalty by endorsing the vice president.
But I think if there's been one lesson of 1968, is that there is no room for anarchy, and there is no room for violence. And there is no solutions to the difficult and compelling problems that we face today here in this United States and around the world by shouting and screaming.
Humphrey and his staff are not really distressed by the demonstrators. They think the chants rebound in his favor, and Humphrey's lectures seem calculated to increase the demonstrators' rage.
I must say that I think this is anything but convincing. It's hardly disturbing, and frankly, it's ridiculous. No one has a monopoly on peace. And may I say with equal candor to my friends, your actions here are going to disgust the American people, and it injures the cause of peace. And I want it said, regardless of the outcome of this election, I want it said then of Hubert Humphrey that at an important and tough moment of his life, he stood by what he believed, and he was not shouted down.
It is clear now that both Mr. Humphrey and the demonstrators wanted this confrontation, this shouting match. Both sides left feeling they'd had a good day. David Shoemaker, CBS News, Boston.
5 of Georgia's leading Democrats and top state officials today switched to the Republican Party, and jubilant Republican Southern leaders said it was a sign of the complete breakup of the Democratic Party in the South. The 5 officials, old guard Georgia Democrats, have been closely aligned with Senator Herman Talmadge, but in Washington, the senator said he had no intention of switching parties. The defectors, caught somewhere between Governor Lester Maddox and Negro State Representative Julian Bond's factions, whose faction split Georgia's Democratic Convention votes, said they were weary of, quote, undisciplined violence, bad economics, teeming inconsistencies, and reckless fiscal attitudes.
For headache pain, muscular pain, or fever of a cold, is there any way to improve on Bayer aspirin to make it faster or stronger? Well, suppose you buffered it, or combined it with other drugs, or fizzed it, or tried to find a stronger ingredient and gave it a fancy name. Would any of these things make Bayer aspirin any faster or stronger? Well, first of all, aspirin is already the strongest pain reliever you can buy. Fizzing wouldn't improve it, nor would combining aspirin with other drugs. And buffering doesn't add speed or strength or gentleness either. You see, no one has ever found a way to improve on Bayer aspirin, because Bayer is 100% aspirin, and aspirin is the strongest pain reliever you can buy. Bayer works wonders.
Richard Nixon promised today that if he's elected to the White House, his administration will be bipartisan. There will be Democrats and independents as well as Republicans, he said. Nixon made his remarks in a radio address as he campaigned in the Middle West. He flew in from Utah, and Bill Plant was there.
Richard Nixon enjoyed a predictably good reception in Salt Lake City last night. Utah is very safe territory for him. Appearing before a standing room only crowd of some 15,000 at the Mormon Tabernacle, he was preceded by the famous choir. At the rally, Nixon defended what is coming to be known as his hard line on the law and order issue. And the former vice president, who also has first-hand knowledge of abuse from hostile crowds, had some thoughts about the kind of hostility to which his opponent and the president have been exposed.
I have some disagreements with the President of the United States, as I've already indicated in the conduct of policy, and with the Vice President of the United States. But as I see what has happened to both of them over these past few years, as I have seen them reviled and cursed, as I have seen the hostile crowds across this land, I disagree more with those who will not give them the opportunity to speak out. Let me say this. The President of the United States and the office that he holds, and the Vice President of the United States and the office he holds, they deserve respect wherever they go, and I know they should get that respect.
Nixon, staying on the high road in his attack on administration policies, did not blame Vice President Humphrey for all the problems which the United States faces.
But I do point out the fact that he helped to make the policies of the past 4 years. He has advocated them. He has defended them. He has not indicated any one of them he disagrees with. And I say that when you're in trouble, you don't turn to one who helped to get you in trouble to get you out of trouble. It's as simple as that in the United States today.
As the candidate prepared to leave the tabernacle, one young admirer got so carried away that she threw a bouquet of roses she'd been holding. In Salt Lake City, as elsewhere across the nation, the theme is unity and goodwill. The promises are broad and high-minded, but Nixon continues to stay away from the tough issues. He promises that the campaign will heat up as it gets closer to the election, but everything is very carefully calculated, so as long as things are going as well as they are, it probably won't heat up very soon. Bill Plant, CBS News, with the Nixon campaign in Salt Lake City.
An important change was made today in a bill to bring about the televised debates by the presidential candidates by changing the Communications Act to limit those debates to the major candidates. Roger Mudd reports from Washington.
Given the go-ahead by Hubert Humphrey, Democrats on the House Commerce Committee today amended the so-called TV Great Debates bill to include third-party candidate George Wallace. The vote 22-10, but the bill still is subject to a second vote next Wednesday. Last week's version of the bill would have permitted a Humphrey-Nixon debate, but left it to the networks to give Wallace comparable time. Some Southerners and border state members of the committee who had opposed any debate at all switched today because they feared excluding Wallace from the main program would have made a martyr of him in their districts. Vice President Humphrey, who is trailing Nixon and obviously needs something he doesn't now have to catch up, gave his approval to a three-way debate last night in a closed meeting with several hundred House Democrats. Commerce Committee Chairman Harley Staggers, questioned by CBS News reporter Mariah McLaughlin, was asked why he switched.
Well, it got into sort of a party lines and a political issue, and after all, I'm a political creature, too. I'm here because I am in politics.
Mr. Chairman, are you saying that the Vice President's strong statement yesterday that he wanted debates finally changed your mind?
No, I wouldn't say that finally changed my mind, but I might say that it had a bearing on it, of course.
The Democrats, such as John Murphy of New York, are aware Nixon does not want to debate Wallace and now hope they have put Nixon in a box.
It's up to candidates Nixon, Vice President Humphrey, and Mr. Wallace whether or not they want to debate together. Now, one of them obviously can't debate alone, so it's up to Mr. Nixon, who so far has shown reluctance to say he wants to debate. Mr. Humphrey says he wants to debate. I think Governor Wallace has said that he will debate. And we're just waiting to see if Vice President Nixon will come out and debate also.
But even if Nixon gives his approval, the bill still must survive next week's committee vote, get through the House, and then go to conference with the Senate. Roger Mudd, CBS News, Washington.
CBS President Frank Stanton today endorsed the amendment allowing Wallace to participate in any TV and radio debates. Since he has emerged as an important political force, Dr. Stanton said, we believe the electorate should be given the opportunity to compare firsthand Wallace's views with those of Humphrey and Nixon. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover said today that the national crime rate in the first half of this year increased by 21%. The northeastern section of the country and the larger cities recorded the biggest increases, but Hoover said the trend was up throughout the nation. Beginning January 1st, Medicare patients will have to pay the first $44 of their hospital bills instead of the present $40. Health, Education, and Welfare Secretary Wilbur Cohen said today in Atlantic City that the increase was necessary because of rising hospital costs. The House today voted a foreign aid ceiling of just under $2 billion, the lowest in the program's history. And then it approved an appropriations bill that would lop off another $355 million. The State Department expressed concern over the cuts, saying they would particularly hurt aid to developing countries. Compromise legislation designed to preserve thousands of acres of giant redwood trees in Northern California was sent to the White House today. The $92 million measure creates the 58,000-acre Redwood National Park, and all timberlands on it will become government property. Other federally owned redwoods will be made available to private lumber companies as part payment for their trees in the new park.
Arthritis is a cold gray pain that creeps into your joints. Warmth helps melt away arthritis pain. Unlock the stiffness. Bake out the chill. Bengay is warmth. Fast, deep down, on-the-spot warmth. For hours of relief from the minor pains of arthritis, hours of comfort, hours of freedom. Warmth is relief, and Bengay is warmth.
When your eyes feel tired and sore, they usually look red, too. If you use plain eye drops or an eye wash, they feel better. But they still look red and tired and sore, unless you use Visine. Visine soothes your eyes. And because of tetrahydrozoline, which only Visine has, it gets the red out, too. It works in 60 seconds. Visine, the modern eye drop that gets the red out.
An Arab ambush near the Jordan River has cost Israeli troops their worst casualties since the 1967 June War. 6 soldiers, including a lieutenant colonel and a major, were killed and 4 wounded. 5 Arab guerrillas also died in that action. 5 heroes of Vietnam battles received medals of honor in the White House today, and the president used the occasion to speak out once again on the war. CBS Newsman Hal Walker reports.
Sergeants David McNerney of Lowell, Massachusetts, Delbert Jennings of Stockton, California, Kenneth Stumpf of Menasha, Wisconsin, Leonard Keller of Rockford, Illinois, and Specialist Raymond Wright of Mineville, New York, all received the nation's highest military honor for bravery in a war that is producing heroes at an unprecedented rate. Keller and Wright were recognized for their 2-man assault on a communist platoon. President Johnson at today's ceremony praised the American trait of impatience, but stressed the need for perseverance in Vietnam.
Discovering that a limited war of insurgency is really difficult to fight, and that the institutions of self-government are very slowly to build, some Americans are ready to forsake our commitment, to ignore our national interest, even if that may mean a larger conflict later on. The history of our country suggests that what the times demand, our people produce. These times demand not only impatience that drives us to change and improve our country, but also steadfastness, so that what we have begun in hope will not be discarded in frustration and anger, so that the bravery of these men and their hundreds of thousands of comrades in arms will not have been offered in vain.
The U.S. Command in Saigon released the latest weekly casualty toll today, and it showed 217 Americans killed in action and 1,485 wounded. South Vietnam reported 376 combat fatalities, and the enemy death toll was put at 2,484. No major ground action was reported in the war today, but terrorist attacks killed 38 Vietnamese civilians. Czechoslovakia today officially announced the dismissal of Foreign Minister Yuri Hajek, who had been reported high up on a purge list prepared by the Kremlin. Hajek, who was in Yugoslavia when Soviet bloc troops invaded his country last month and later denounced the occupation at the United Nations, is now in Prague. Premier Oldrich Chernak is taking over his duties. Other Czechoslovak officials considered anti-Soviet are expected to be ousted following the forthcoming Moscow meeting between the Kremlin and Prague leaders. The world's most powerful communications satellite, including a relay for color television, was supposed to take its place today over the Atlantic. But was expected to be a routine launch from Cape Kennedy last night, turned into a $13 million failure. Steve Rowan reports.
The countdown had gone smoothly, and precisely on time, the three-stage rocket lifted off Pad 17A. 9 seconds later, as planned, it started to nose over and head out across the Atlantic. But then erratic guidance caused the rocket to pitch over too much. And after the strapped-on solid fuel boosters burned out and dropped away, the rocket went wild, tumbling over and over. The first stage finally shook itself to pieces, and 8 seconds later, the range safety officer pressed a button to destroy the other stages and the big new communications relay package. Steve Rowan, CBS News.
The controversy over the appointment of Black Panther leader Eldridge Cleaver at the University of California as a lecturer intensified today when it was learned that another Black Panther, George Murray, already is on the staff of a state college. University regents who are trying to block Cleaver's appointment have ordered a full investigation.
I cut my smoking in half.
I quit smoking altogether.
I stopped smoking and I didn't gain weight.
People everywhere who want real help are breaking the cigarette habit with this medicated lozenge called Nicoban. Nicoban was developed by a doctor to help people cut down on smoking, often without gaining weight. Doctors have been recommending Nicoban for years to help satisfy tobacco hunger, help control appetite, too. For real help breaking the cigarette habit, try Nicoban. Nicoban sure beats smoking.
Honey, it's 3 a.m.
I can't sleep.
When simple nervous tension keeps you awake, take Sominex as directed for 100% safe sleep. Sominex contains 3 medical ingredients to bring on restful sleep.
Take Sominex tonight and sleep. Safe and restful sleep, sleep, sleep.
Take 2 Sominex tablets and sleep. Now also in capsules, hundreds of sleep-inducing granules. In every Sominex capsule. Try it.
Former President Eisenhower's doctor said today there's been a, quote, miraculous turnabout in Mr. Eisenhower's condition. His personal physician says that Mr. Eisenhower, who's recovering from his 7th heart attack, now gets out of bed, sits in a chair, and has a good appetite. Earlier at a White House ceremony, President Johnson designated the week of October 13th as America's Salute to Eisenhower Week. A 25,000-word personal account of the Cuban Missile Crisis, written by the late Senator Robert Kennedy, has been bought by McCall's magazine for $1 million. The magazine said that it plans to publish the article in November. The money will go to the senator's family. As we reported yesterday, airplanes flying in and out of New York's major airports have come under a new radar control system, a system that's become the center of a dispute between air traffic controllers and the Federal Aviation Administration. The FAA says the system is safer and more efficient, but some controllers claim it's not and have warned of possible disasters. John Lawrence reports.
All summer long, airline passengers suffered through long delays as air traffic controllers spaced out takeoffs and landings. The charge then, too much congestion at airports and too much work in control rooms. Now passengers are warned that they may not be safe flying in and out of New York. The current charge, a new radar system, is dangerous. It's called the Common Instrument Flight Rules Room, where traffic controllers keep track of all flights for all 3 New York airports. A union representing some of the controllers claims that Common IFR is unsafe.
The air traveler using the airports in New York is in constant danger. And the air traffic controllers are sick and tired of being used as patsies for the FAA. They're playing Russian roulette in New York, and it's affecting not only New York, but it's affecting planes throughout the United States. And I think D.D. Thomas, the administrator of the FAA, better step in, close down the Common IFR room, and let the radar for each airport take care of itself.
The operators know where the planes are at all times.
Positively not. Our air traffic controllers in LaGuardia, Newark, and Kennedy do not know where these planes are at all times. They're losing them on the presentation on the boards.
The issue is snarled in a controversy between the Federal Aviation Agency and controllers, a power struggle between 2 controllers' unions, and differences of opinion among controllers themselves. The FAA calls Lyon's charges thoroughly irresponsible. But there have been malfunctions in the new system. Radar screens have blacked out, and the question is whether that represents serious danger. Today, the FAA produced a supervisor and a controller who approve of the new system.
Well, I think it's a definite improvement over the system we've had. As few people know, there are definite amounts of unused airspace. I think about 120 miles of it. With this new system, we'll be able to, in the future, utilize all of the airspace rather than just some of it. And I think in time it will be great.
What advantage is there in the common IFR?
The immediate advantages are close coordination. In the past, if an airplane departed Kennedy was penetrating the LaGuardia airspace, it was a big deal to try to get on the telephone and square this thing away. Where now, the gentleman on my right, he just taps me on the shoulder and points to the big screen and says, there's a fellow coming into your area, and I can take an immediate action on him.
When's the last time your radar scope went out?
I believe it was last week. It was out for a minute or two. I reverted to the Newark large screen display, which gives Kennedy additional radar coverage, and was able to provide traffic service and radar separation by use of the Newark radar system. So technically I did have a radar failure, but by utilizing another radar system, the aircraft was always under radar control.
Were there a few tense moments there while you switched?
For me personally, no, because I had access to the other radar system. So did one or two of the other controllers in the room.
Most air traffic controllers feel they are overworked and underpaid for the critical kind of job they have to do. Although Congress has authorized the addition of several thousand more controllers, it will take years to train and get them on the job. In the meantime, the men at the FAA installation here are working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, under extreme pressure. And with all the problems of getting adjusted to a new radar control system, when there are malfunctions, as there have been, some controllers cry danger. John Lawrence, CBS News at Kennedy Airport in New York.
In Mexico City, Army troops today occupied the National University and drove out hundreds of student demonstrators who have threatened to disrupt the Olympic Games there next month. The students have been on strike for 2 months in a protest against alleged police brutality and government repression. Malaysia today suspended diplomatic relations with the Philippines, recalled its diplomats from Manila, and put its armed forces on alert. All this came in response to a new Filipino proclamation claiming sovereignty over Sabah, the Malaysian state of Borneo. Filipino President Ferdinand Marcos said his government does not intend to try to seize Sabah by force, that it was simply restating a right to claim the area. But the Malaysians called the action tantamount to aggression, and they got immediate assurances of support by Britain in the event there is a military confrontation. Prices on the New York Stock Exchange closed mixed today in heavy trading. The volume was almost 18 million shares, and the exchange index gained 8 cents.
Can this exquisitely proportioned beauty survive? She's about to be tormented. Watch. 27 tons of sand and rock will crash down on our beauty. We're talking about the elegant new ballpoint pen from Bic, the refillable Click. Can the Click survive? We'll soon know. Dare we look? Yes, the sleek finish gleams. Retracting mechanism works perfectly, but will it write? Like all Bics, the new Click writes first time, every time. Its diamide ball never fails. Carry it proudly.
Pick up a beauty today. The new Bic Click. Refillable. 8 delicious colors. Very expensive. 49 cents each. You'd be silly to spend more for any pen.
Now to Washington and our chief national correspondent, Eric Severide, for some more observations on the current political campaign. Eric?
The general belief among professional politician watchers is that you cannot change a man after he reaches middle age. but the man can always change his methods if the times seem to require it. Both Humphrey and Nixon are trying to play new roles. Mr. Humphrey, normally a most affable public man, is resorting, because he's behind, to epithets like fearless Fosdick, meaning his Republican opponent. And Mr. Nixon, because he's ahead, deplores the use of even such minor epithets as that, and uses no language approaching his attacks of years ago when he impugned the patriotism of opponents. Nixon said today that as president he would expect to make decisions that are not popular. He doesn't believe in government by Gallup poll, he said. What he is saying here is that he will reverse his present methods once elected because his present campaign is calibrated to the opinion polls to a fine degree. Nixon proclaimed today that when a president, meaning Johnson, cannot travel abroad or to any major American city without fear of a hostile demonstration, then it's time for new leadership. It may be time for new leadership on many counts, but as Al Smith used to say, let's look at the record, just to put things in fair balance. Mr. Johnson travels to many major cities. What he shies away from are certain places in those cities, like campuses, where he very probably would get a hostile reception. In none of his foreign travels did hostile demonstrators come near matching in numbers the enthusiastic crowds he received. In 1958, Mr. Nixon himself was nearly killed by a hostile crowd in Venezuela. The Russians canceled President Eisenhower's visit to Moscow after the U-2 affair and the abortive summit meeting in 1960. The Japanese cabinet asked him not to make the visit to Japan in the same year for fear of hostile mobs. Just to complete the record, it might also be recalled that in the 54 congressional campaign, when Vice President Nixon made a commencement address at his alma mater, Whittier College, some senior students set up a separate receiving line to avoid shaking his hand. The faculty at Duke University, where he went to law school, vetoed an honorary degree for him. And protesting citizens killed a move to name a street after him in his hometown of Whittier, all in reaction to his campaigning methods. So when Mr. Nixon says it's a shame the way some people are treating Mr. Humphrey, he knows whereof he speaks. Walter?
And that's the way it is. Thursday, September 19th, 1968. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
You can buy the freshest just-picked greens. But a salad without wishbone is just a bowl of wet vegetables. Wishbone Italian adds sassy flavor, real Italian flavor, young garlic, mild peppers, floating in golden oil and vintage vinegar. Choose Wishbone Italian, because a salad without wishbone is just a bowl of wet vegetables.
Are you looking for a drink to make you cool from your head down to your toes? Well, stop that looking and start sipping Lipton, icy Lipton tea. Alone or with food, it's the briskest flavor ever brewed, because Lipton's flow-through tea bag gives you 2 bags of flavor in one. Refresh, my friend, and start sipping Lipton, icy Lipton tea. Like an instant? Get Lipton Instant. Get fresh brewed flavor instantly.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. It's something